Yes, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Aro Ling Cardiff. Tonight's teachings are given by Ngakma Nor'dzin and are on the subject of the three spheres of being.
So, in one way, the three spheres of being could be very simple. There's a logic to it. It's obvious that there are three ways in which we exist as beings. So we obviously have a physical quality. We are flesh and blood. There's fluids flowing in our body, blood and lymph. We have a digestive system. There's breath, the air element in terms of breath and our energy, and consciousness, which is another aspect of our physicality. So this is obvious that these exist. Then in terms of the second sphere, this is a sphere where there is form, but it's form that is not intangible in the same way as flesh and blood. So this is the sphere of where emotions arise, where we are thinking, planning, where we experience memory, making plans, all that sort of thing. It's not tangible, but it's clearly a part of how we are as beings. And then the third sphere is the capacity for all this to arise, the space from which it is possible for all this to arise. And these three spheres are clearly apparent for all beings, that we have any contact with. So clearly animals have emotions. Animals react in an emotional way and seem to have memories, and even seem to have thought processes that you could call planning. And they obviously have a physicality, and all this arises from emptiness. So all these qualities, these three qualities, are clearly apparent just from the point of view of common sense. We don't have to enter into some deep spiritual contemplation to recognize these three ways in which we exist. And it's also obvious when we look at them that they cannot be separated either. So you don't have a body that's walking around on its own without some consciousness there that is animating it. I think there are legends of zombies and Rolangs, but our ordinary existence is that if you are alive, if you're a physical being alive in the world, then you are connected to whatever enables that to be a complete unit. And if you are alive in the world, then you're going to have emotions and thoughts. And those emotions and thoughts are connected into the individuality of this being or your being. They don't sort of wander around on their own. So the fact that you cannot separate these, that they cannot exist separately, is also actually obvious and very easy to understand through basic common sense. So what we need to understand then from the point of view of practice is, why do we need to know about these three spheres? How are those spheres relevant in terms of what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to be as practitioners? So first of all, let's run through some technical language. The Sanskrit words for these three spheres are Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And in Tibetan, Dharmakaya is Chirku, Sambhogakaya is Longku, and Nirmanakaya is Tulku. And in English, these could be regarded as mind, speech, or vision, and body, or emptiness, energy, and form. The Dharmakaya sphere, from the perspective of realization, is the sphere of unconditioned potentiality. And what is meant by unconditioned here is that this sphere is pure and unstained from the beginning. It has always been pure. It has always existed. It will always exist, and it will always be pure. So even though it's an aspect of deluded beings, its essence is empty and pure. So it's the sphere of potentiality from which all form arises, and it's unconditioned because the nature of the form that arises from it does not in any way mar it or make it impure. It remains pure and beginningless. The Sambhogakaya is the sphere of intangible appearance, so realized tangible appearance. So these are the memories and the thoughts and what appears to the senses. So hearing, there is a physical connection there, but the quality of hearing is intangible. The quality of tasting, there are chemical processes happening there, but the quality of the experience of tasting is intangible. So these are the results that arise through the physical sense fields. And then the Nirmanakaya is the sphere of realized manifestation in terms of these as realized spheres. So the forms manifest, form will always manifest. But in terms of realization, realized form is not affected by the aging or sickness or old age process. That form is still perfect as it is and can be experienced that way through practice. I think to make things simple for this teaching, I'm just going to use the words Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. So the Dharmakaya is empty, the Sambhogakaya is the sphere of energy, movement, changing, but intangible, and the Nirmanakaya is the sphere of tangible form. Now, there was a time in my history as a practitioner where I was very confused about the spheres, because we talk about duality, we talk about form and emptiness, and that is two things, and yet there are three spheres. And it eventually dawned on me that there are still emptiness and form, but in terms of the teaching of the three spheres, form is divided into two spheres. So there's intangible form and tangible form. So when we talk about emptiness and form, this could also be including the three spheres, but form refers to the two spheres. And it took me a long time for that to dawn on me. So in terms of sutra, the three spheres are regarded as the three bodies of the Buddha. So the Dharmakaya, the realized quality of the Buddha's Dharmakaya manifestation, is the fruit of wisdom. So this is the wisdom body. And then the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya manifestations of the Buddha, of a realized being. These are the enjoyment body and the activities that are engaged in, the capacity to actually interact with other beings and interact with phenomena. So these are the qualities of the Buddha. And these are qualities that in symbolism, there are particular marks on the body and particular ways that the Buddha is drawn to indicate the wisdom body and the enjoyment body and the capacities of the Buddha. Now in Tantra, we aspire to transform our ordinary experience of body, energy, and the mind, to transform those in order to discover the beginningless nature of the non-duality of these, of form and emptiness, which manifests as the wisdom and enjoyment body of the Buddha. So Tantra is the path of transformation that enables us to transform our ordinary experience of the two spheres of form and the one sphere of emptiness into the wisdom and enjoyment body. Now in Dzogchen, from the perspective of Dzogchen, then we are already these realized qualities. We are already non-duality. We are already emptiness, energy, and form as an undivided, inseparable non-duality. And the practices enable us to discover this. So in terms of the spheres and the different vehicles, from the perspective of Sutra, we talk about the Nirmanakaya more, because you're working with form in order to discover emptiness. So the practices will include things like looking at the disgusting nature of the body to prevent attachment to the body. So you will look at the flesh and the bones and the blood and the pus and the feces and the urine and develop a sense of disgust, so that when you're lusting after the beautiful form of your lover, then you see them for what they are at the same time. And this lets go of attachment to that lust. From the perspective of outer and inner Tantra, we talk about the visionary world of outer and inner Tantra. And this is more connected with the skandhas than with the actual physical qualities of the body. So this is form, feeling, perception, mental formations and consciousness, and the emotions and the experiences of the sense fields. From the perspective of Dzogchen, we talk about the tigles and the elements. Now the kayas, looking at the kayas is a Sanskrit word for the spheres of being. We can approach these in terms of the three spheres as displays, and displays that enable us to realize the non-dual pristine quality of the spheres. So the Dharmakaya can be understood as presence display. This is the wisdom quality of always being available to be whatever form is needed. It's the quality of being open and unperturbed, undisturbed by whatever is arising, whatever form is arising, to be able to respond to that form appropriately and to be of benefit to others in that response. In terms of taking the teacher as the path through the three kayas, we recognize the wisdom and presence of our teacher and are empty in relationship to that presence. So we experience the teacher as the manifestation of wisdom mind. The Sambhogakaya is connected to personality. As soon as we move into form, so that's the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya, then there is immediately individuality, because form manifests in an individual way. Form is always changeable and movable and always unique, always manifesting in a unique and individual way. So our own personality and the personality of every practitioner is of itself a method for benefiting others. You benefit others through who you are. You can't benefit others by trying to be somebody else. You may aspire to have the qualities of your teacher, but nevertheless, you are an individual. You have your own individual personality. And when your personality is different to your teacher, that doesn't have to be seen as a problem. One embraces one teacher's personality as practice, but one embraces the differences between one's own personality and the personality of the teacher as delightful and inspiring. We may want to aspire to the same appreciation as our teachers, or our bodies simply may not be able to appreciate in the same way as our teachers. If you have a teacher who happens to think sprouts are the most delicious food in the world, and you happen to have the wrong taste buds, so sprouts taste disgusting to you, then you enjoy your teacher's enjoyment in those sprouts, but you don't somehow have to try and squeeze yourself into liking sprouts yourself. You just accept that that is a way that you are different. And the fact of difference is of itself inspiring, because it shows that form always manifests as difference in that way. So the differences of the personality of your teacher are a source of appreciation of difference and a source of either aspiration, inspiration, or working with not allowing oneself to become fixed in form should manifest in a particular way. In terms of Nirmanakaya, we work with life circumstances. Life circumstances are beyond control. There's always the chaotic aspect there. One may certainly try to plan what happens in one's life and have ideas about what you're going to do. I would imagine there are quite a lot of people who had some very lovely plans for this bank holiday Monday that we have in Britain today. And I think sitting in a traffic jam on a motorway was probably not part of those plans, but unfortunately that is probably what many bank holiday travellers today will have experienced. So circumstances can be chaotic. There can be sad circumstances. People die, people we care about get ill, we lose things that we care about, or they break, or they're no longer usable. And then there are happy circumstances when things go right for us. And once again, the practice of Vajrayana is not to have one's happiness invested in the nature of those circumstances. Vajrayana works with those circumstances, however those circumstances manifest. And the circumstances of the teacher are an inspiration because we see how the teacher engages with their life circumstances, the chaos of their life circumstances, that the teacher will have plans and ideas about the evolution of the Confederate Sanghas of Aro, for example. And sometimes chaos intervenes and things do not go the way we had hoped they would go. A recent example of this would be quite a sad example, would be that Dudjom Rinpoche Sangye Pema Shepa had arranged a trip to Britain and had it was organized as part of that trip that he would come to Drala Jong. And then the COVID pandemic intervened and all plans were had to be cancelled, so he never came to Britain, and now very sadly he has died, so he will never come to Britain. So that is a very clear example of the plans of the Lama do not always manifest because we cannot control the chaotic nature of life circumstances, the chaotic nature in which things simply happen as they happen. But once again, in working with those circumstances from the perspective of Vajrayana, we embrace the circumstances as they are. And we feel sad that Dudjom Rinpoche Sangye Pema Shepa did not come and now will never come. But we don't set that up as a reference point to cause ourselves endless distress or see it as some sort of the world is working against us, that there's some sort of plan out there that is working against us. We don't look at things in that manner. Now, in the practice of in Vajrayana, and particularly in Tantra, you will see that there are often triads of yidams, groups of 3 yidams, and these are also related to the spheres of being. So you may have a Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and a Niyamanakaya manifestation. The Dharmakaya is the empty sphere, and this will usually be a peaceful form of a yidam. The Sambhogakaya is a sphere of sensation, and this will be a joyous yidam or a semi-wrathful yidam. And then Niyamanakaya is the sphere of activity, so this will be a wrathful yidam. And just to give you one example of one of these sets of 3 yidams formulated in this way, we have Kuntuzangmo, who is the Dharmakaya yidam. Then there's Dorji Pagmo, who is the Sambhogakaya yidam, and Sengedongma, who is the Niyamanakaya yidam. And this is a connection there that functions in terms of Tantra. Now, with regard to looking at historical beings such as Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal, we can also look at these and work with our experience and our relationship with them in terms of the 3 kayas. So from the perspective of the Dharmakaya, we can regard Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal as reflections of the nature of our own mind. So they existed as beings, and their minds, the quality of their minds, which still continue, we can make contact with through practice and recognize this as a reflection of the beginningless qualities of our own wisdom mind. We can visualize Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal in visionary form, and this is the Sambhoga Kaya way of working with them. And we can recognize our own Sambhoga Kaya qualities in terms of, again, a reflection that we can manifest the qualities of Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal in transforming the emotions and recognizing directly the nature of the elements and our relationship with our senses and sense fields. And then in terms of the Nirmanakaya, we can look at the historical story of Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal, of who they were and what they did with their physical manifestation, what they achieved, how they used being a human being as a means of practice and as a means of aspiration for all those who knew them and still know them to this day through practice. So we can look at what they achieved in their lives as inspiration. But we can also do this with ourselves. We can look at how we have changed through practice. We can see that perhaps we don't get angry as easily as we used to, that we know more than we used to, that practice becomes easier over the years. I can remember when practicing for an hour was almost inconceivable that I could actually sit for an hour and be focused and present and not fall asleep or just think, oh God, I can't do this. That was very difficult years ago. But as your practice develops, you find that sitting for an hour becomes increasingly easy, and it is possible to remain focused and present and gain some sense of awakening through that repetition of practicing in that way. And then finally, I just want to return to the idea of these three spheres being inseparable. Because another thing that can be a little bit confusing when looking at teachings on the kayas, the spheres of being, is that suddenly a fourth one pops up. The kusum, which means sphere 3, becomes the kuji, which means sphere 4. And I think in terms of translation, it might be helpful to look at this in terms of there are 3 spheres, 1, 2, and 3, but the fourth sphere is not a number 4 sphere, it's the fourth sphere, which is an expression of their unification. And this is called Vajrakaya or Svabhavika Kaya, and in Tibetan, Nowoku. And when these 3 are unified in this way, this becomes the essence sphere. This is the essence of the nature of the 3 spheres expressed as a single sphere and understood as not being separate. So this is an expression of non-duality. The one sphere of emptiness and the 2 spheres of form understood as non-duality are the essence sphere. This actually single sphere of Nowoku or Svabhavika Kaya. Actually, that is the only sphere, but it's expressed as a fourth sphere. Now, in terms of Dzogchen, we do not really talk about the spheres of being, because the base, the path, and the fruit of Dzogchen is non-duality. So it would be illogical to talk about the three spheres as being separate in terms of a path that only talks about non-duality. So in Dzogchen, we talk about the qualities of the essence sphere, and that these qualities are non-hierarchic and undivided. And these qualities are the essence, nature, and energy of the spheres, the essence, nature, and energy of reality as it is, the reality of being a realized being who dwells in non-duality. The Tibetan for those is Nowo, Rangjing, and Tukje. And the essence is empty, the energy is clear, and the, sorry, I said that wrong, essence, nature, energy. The essence is empty, the nature is clear, and the energy is unobstructed. And this is, the symbols for these are the mirror, the spherical crystal, and the faceted crystal. And these are all expressions of non-duality, of the nature of reality as it is from the perspective of non-duality. So if you come across the teachings on the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya, remember that often this is an expression of realization and that we're not there. But it's also an expression of the potential of us, and we are there. Because from the perspective of Dzogchen, we are all beginninglessly realized. So we all are beginninglessly dwelling in the essence sphere, but we do not recognize this. So embrace these in terms of practice. There are practices of body, there are practices of energy, there are practices of mind. Embrace these, and if you engage in those practices, then you will realize the wisdom and enjoyment body of the Buddha, and know what the essence sphere actually is.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ngakma Nor'dzin. I found that most inspirational. I like the way that anyone who encounters these teachings can begin with them at whatever point makes sense to them. We may not all understand the view of Dzogchen, but we can start where you started. We all have a body, we all have energy, and we all have emptiness, and we can recognize that in ourselves and go from there.
I often get confused when I'm talking about the Dzogchen ones, because energy pops down to
it becomes
the third
another
one.
Aspect.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The term energy is a bit of a
it's
blunt
the only
instrument.
word we have. Yeah, it is difficult.
But I do like that we can all begin knowing, however theoretically, that we all have this sense of unconditioned potentiality, and everything comes out of that. And so we don't necessarily need to drag our habits and our neuroses with us, because we're all coming from an unconditioned nature.
Good.
Marvelous.